Dear all, I invite you to travel back in time. The journey is supposed to last between 35 to 40 minutes. On the illustration in front of you, you have on the left-hand side a view of Brussels fin de siècle by Ensor. You see all the life colors. On the opposite, on the right-hand side of the illustration, you have our dear Rue de la Loi, full of cars and of pollution. The aim of the discussion today is the relation between art and influence for a lobbyist, which is a curious topic. What is the link between the two? This is what we will try to discover. Me personally, I have this double belonging. I am, some of you know that, a long-standing lobbyist, as you can see in the top right, working for many associations and consultancies, but also a long-standing art aficionado in the past, as you can see, and also today with my wife. The two quotes that you see here are twins. Art is a hook for creating trust and bringing in new customers. Yes, art somewhere is a business developer. Thanks to culture, we think bigger and we can build complexity with your guest and facilitate business and commercial agreements. The second sentence is also the same spirit. My nightmare, a working lunch where all we talk about is business. Again, we have to put art or culture in everything in order to make life easier and more pleasant. The other part of the slide here represents the Wirtz Museum, very close from the European Parliament and very interesting to visit. Wirtz being one of the first symbolists in the fin de siècle period. In the end of the 1980s, I was asked to move to Brussels to become the Director General of the European Sugar Barons, the European sugar industry. It was for me a fantastic chance, an incredible promotion. I knew very little Brussels, I had no connections there, and in fact I decided to create a place to meet people. Somewhere art was my door opener to all European circles. I decided to buy a house, and I was lucky to find a very innovative architect for a renovation which was published in many decoration magazines, as you can see here, and also recognized by the newspaper Le Soir as an interesting concept and as an art gallery. In this house, and it was for me then easy to meet people and also people among the institutions and colleagues from the different professional associations. So I have during 2 years organized very regularly art exhibitions. You find also the logo of the house on the posters of different exhibitions, even a calendar in 1992. But outside this house as a support for communication, art was also very involved in my daily life and important dossiers. In particular, the dossier of the Euro Grey Round negotiation with the GATT in between 1990 and 1992. As you can see here on the screen, I created a sort of logo of the campaign. The GATT was very difficult about European sugar, and it was very dangerous for the industry in terms of reduction of production, increase of imports, reduction in prices, so it was a big lobby battle. And the symbol of this battle was this illustration, which is an art photo showing, in fact, somewhere the fire in the sugar house. But for many other dossiers, I use artistic creators for graphism, creations of logos, also Christmas cards. During years, each year, I was printing a specific Christmas card designed by an artist, but bringing a specific message about a specific dossier and widely spread to the EU institutions. As you can see now, in fact, my life is divided in two parts. I am still an active European lobbyist, and I am an art collector, an art amateur. But in lobbying, as in art, you have to be specialized if you want to count. For lobbying, you see, I have multiplied networks, not only professional one, but also via publishing, via academia, which was giving, of course, credibility. And somewhere I did exactly the same in art. So I am, as you can see here, specialized essentially in the fin de siècle period, but also in close relations with academia, museums, also publishing and writing books, creating virtual circles. I have tried both in lobbying and in art to have a specific methodology, the aim being to anticipate, to create visibility, and to bring credibility. And anticipation, visibility, and credibility are both important in my profession lobbying and in my passion collecting and promoting fin de siècle art. By the way, Brussels is a very good location for art in general and for the fin de siècle period in particular, with the avant-garde. And obviously, and few people know that, certainly Belgium was one of the two main art centers in the world at the end of the 19th century, with Paris, producing many exhibitions, salons, and a lot of reviews, magazines of a key interest even now. I think for a good pedagogic approach of this session, it's interesting to have a quick look of about the different artistic movements in the fin de siècle period. Some movements are more homogeneous than some others. As you will see, Impressionist is Impressionism, Cubism is Cubism. But let's see some images to have a better idea. Impressionism is something created in 1870, more or less, and you see here what is considered as the first Impressionist painting by Claude Monet. Impression Sunrise, very, very famous. It's a small painting, very beautiful, but also you see that the painters are evolving years after year, because, as you see here, the same Claude Monet, now in 1910, is anticipating the movement of abstraction, despite the fact he was still an Impressionist. Art Nouveau is also very, very important in Belgium and in particular in Brussels. On the left part you see the Museum of Instruments in the center of the city, and also a poster, Sarah Bernoir by Mouchat. Mouchat is a very famous designer, and Sarah Bernard is at this period, the fin de siècle, like Marilyn Monroe, power cube. So Sarah Bernard was the star of the star. The fauve period is a pure color. It's a relatively short period, beginning of the 20th centuries. And then after, you have the nabbies. I think it's interesting to spend some moments about the nabbies. First of all, it's mostly a French movement, but also with some international connections. In particular, Torop, the Dutch painter, and Verkade, a Danish painter. What is interesting with the Nabby is somewhere a balance between religion and esotericism, mysteries, magic, spirituality, and you find that clearly in this illustration by Paul Razon. Then after, the post-impressionist Van Gogh, a very, very famous painting with crows, and also Paul Gauguin. You have here two illustrations of Gauguin, and in particular the Yellow Christ. You have to know that we have also the Green Christ, also by Gauguin, in the Musée Royal des Beaux-Arts in Brussels. Symbolism, I am a specialist. I'm a specialist of the symbolist period, but here I put a question mark. It is so difficult to define symbolism in one illustration. After in-depth reflection, I choose this one in black and white, which symbolize mystery, introspection, serenity, sobriety. Well, I found this drawing in a cellar full of dust with a large oil mark, but by a miracle of restoration now it is like new, and it's also a pleasure for a collector to find in dust in cellars or in attic pieces and then to restore them. But this is really somewhere by Charles Dudley, a symbol of what the symbolist period is, in my opinion. In the different artistic movements, you have, of course, Cubist, but here it's very clear a Cubist is a Cubist, and the Cubist period is mostly driven by Picasso and Georges Braque. Then after we have the modern art, and the inventor, or the first supposed to be a modern artist is Picasso. And you see here, Picasso was the last symbolist and the first modern. And you have here on the left side a symbolist painting by Picasso, very sad by the way, and the first modern painting of all the history, the ladies of Avignon. So now, in a nutshell, again, you have all the periods together, and you see that the fin de siècle period is across different movements, but it's a period which is in reality very rare. And when you go to the main arts fair in Brussels, Brafa, and in Maastricht, TEFAF, you find many pieces of all the periods, but very few from the symbolist period, simply because they are rare and that the collectors want to keep them for themselves, and you have a very little market for symbolist pieces. Again, for pedagogy, who are the great fin de siècle figures? Well, seen with the eyes of yesterday, obviously, we have two very dominant characters, Wagner and Baudelaire. Wagner is a musician making a revolution not only in music but also in theater. And Baudelaire, a poet still, of course, very famous. Seen through today's eyes, Gauguin, obviously, is a very important character of the fin de siècle period. Van Gogh, also Klimt, everybody knows Klimt. Munch, you see here the Scream, and to these names we can certainly also add Rodin. To come back to the symbolist artistic movement, the big difficulty here, contrary to Impressionism or to Cubist, the great difficulty here is to find a line between the different artists, because you have as many symbolism as symbolist artists. Why is that? Because in fact you have a big range of artists from ideal to decadence. So on the left side you see a drawing from Odilon Redon inspired by spirituality. So this is the ideal part of the symbolist movement. But on the other, by Rops, you see somewhere blasphemy, decadence, skeleton, skulls and snakes. So all that is part of the symbolist movement, which is also, by the way, a very international one. The following painting speak. You have here William Blake, very famous, The Ancient of Days, and you see here all the esoteric content, the occultist content of this painting. And on the right, Gabriel Rossetti with a famous red-haired woman. The next one is Arnold Böcklin, a German, you see the island of the dead, spirituality. And then after, James Whistler and Franz von Stuck, the German, the scene, here again, decadence, skulls and snakes in skulls. So it's very much part of the fin de siècle symbolist period, with also an important Scandinavian pillar. Here is a cover of a catalogue, Swedish Ecstasy, recently presented at the Beaux-Arts Museum in Belgium. But symbolism is not only paintings, it's a total art with an important number of musicians, of course Debussy, that you know very well, but also Erik Satie, Ravel, Scriabin, a new generation of musicians. Also very important in literature, poetry, theater. For literature and theater, internationalism again, a lot of French, but also Maeterlinck, the Belgium, Scandinavian, Strindberg, Ibsen, not very funny by the way, very intimate theater, to a certain extent boring. Theater again, with one of the most famous posters of Toulouse-Lautrec, and you see on the top right of the poster a well-known character, Fénéon, who is not only a famous art critic but also an anarchist. And we will see a bit later that the fin de siècle period is a very violent one, characterized by a very important anarchist movement with bombs and attacks. To come back to the fact that you have as many symbolism as symbolist artists, we have here a demonstration. On the right hand side, we have something very peaceful, Puvis de Chavannes, soft symbolism, if I must say. In the middle, Jean Delville, again ideal art, and on the left side, Georges Mine, who is somewhere the creator of minimal art. And you find also this particular sculpture of Georges Mine at the Neue Gallery in front of the Metropolitan Museum, just at the bottom of the famous portrait of Madame Adele Bloch-Brauer from Klimt. So if you go to New York, please visit the Neue Gallery with this fantastic portrait of Klimt and this wonderful sculpture kneeling by Georges Mine. Another type of symbolism is Gauguin. Gauguin is considered as a symbolist. Then after Fernand Knopf, you see what are the similarities between these two paintings? Nothing. Then after again the Scream by Edouard Munch, Jean Delville, a pure symbolist painter. What is to know also about the symbolist period is the fact that the symbolist is very linked with occultism. The occultism is not limited to the fin de siècle period. We have also an important occult component in the surrealist period between 1920 and 1930. All André Breton and its fellows were very much occupied by occultism, esotericism, which were very much part of the surrealist movement. But again, many differences. Most artists in the fin de siècle period were Freemasons, Theosophists, Kabbalists or alchemists. But the problem is that here you have not a pure definition of each of these movements. Each artist has his own interpretation of the symbols. The first symbol on the left is a Rose Croix. Then what that means, you have different movements, Rose Croix, what is the interpretation that we can have? The square with the triangle and the eye, is it something religious or non-religious? We have piles of books trying to define each of these symbols, and each artist has his own interpretation. And you see on the next slides paintings and drawings by Jean Delville, who was again a very important occult and symbolist painter. Prométhée by Jean Delville, which is presented in the main bibliothèque of ULB in Brussels, and in the middle, again, a drawing, very theosophist, by Jean Delville to illustrate the Poème du Feu by Scriabin, the great composer. And also, at the end, the famous portrait of Madame Stuart Merrill by Jean Delville. So, in a nutshell, symbolism or symbolist period is difficult to understand, but fascinating, and any person interested by this period will of course has his own interpretation and his own vision of the relevant artist. As the second part of my presentation, let's try to see if the late 19th century and the early 21st centuries are in complete opposition. And to do that, let's turn ourselves to the fin de siècle period and to try to define in some slide how this period was operationally and daily speaking. First of all, at that time you had no TV, no radio, nothing, so the nightlife was very, very important, with many cabarets, opera, also on the next slide, prostitution. Curiously, the gender issue was already there, and you see this marvelous painting which is at Musée d'Orsay right now, Platon School by Jean Delville, clearly about androgyny. It's also the first wave of feminism and the age of caricature. And the age of caricature, many artists, great talents, but an extreme violence. And I have opted to define the fin de siècle period by some caricature, which, in my opinion, are well illustrating the society. The next one you see is a minister, and you see how he's represented. It's very violent. It will be not accepted right now. Then after you see the church by anti-clerical drawers. Clearly, the fin de siècle period is an oppression against the people. And you see Freemason against the church, period really which can be defined by greed, you know, inequalities, wild capitalism. Also, colonialism is very, very important, and the result is a huge poverty of the people and a very important corruption. Also, you see the forces of evil in the middle of everything, and the battle between the states and the church. Also, between 1885 and 1895, anarchism, violence, attacks, bombs. And as I have said already, the great artists of the time illustrate anarchist review. So now, as a conclusion, we will try to draw parallels between the 1893 period and the 2023 period. What can we say about the fin de siècle period? Clearly, it's a period which is marked by inequalities, greed, violence, but also a very personal way to think. You know, we have here brilliant characters, multiple skills, where we see that despite the violence, your opponent is not your enemy. And we see also that everybody has a personal way to think, and somewhere crisis is a resource. So it's somewhere very lively, and here the opposite of the present society today, and in particular the society in the European district. The present society in the European district is a common way to think and a political correctness, which is again the exact opposite of the same district 1 century before. I think if we have to take some messages about lobbying, is that the importance of the personal factor. I think the best way to be influential is to be politically correct, to follow the common way. You have to be yourself, is absolutely fundamental. You have to speak, to meet, to bring added value, and to use text and images in order to facilitate your messages to your targets. In a very bureaucratic period as we are, I think the more that the dossiers are complex, the most you have to keep them simple. And in order to do so, again, you have to be very personal and to put yourself in everything you do. When you write, when you speak, you have to put your character in the center of the message, because your character is also the guarantee of your integrity, your credibility, and your personality. So I think that this conclusion could be a very positive one. Despite the complexity of the dossiers in Brussels, despite the fact that we have many actors and probably too many actors, I believe that following these basic rules, it is totally possible to stay influential vis-à-vis the institution and to take on board messages brought by art, and to use also a cultural implication to facilitate discussion and to improve your personality. Regarding myself, the last slide is a glimpse of Atelier Symboliste, which is my symbolist art studio. This is my future, and I will devote all my time to my collection, publications, exhibitions, lent to museums, when I will stop in a couple of months my activity of lobbyist. Thank you very much for your attention. On the next slide you have my details, mobile phone number and emails, so it's easy to join me if you wish. Thank you very much for your attention. All the best.